Hi guys, this is the 6th screencast from Acquisition of Skill, and this time we're going to be discussing different methods of practice. Bear in mind this isn't methods of teaching, so whole part method, etc. This is methods of practice, which is slightly different. Okay, we have 4 types of methods of practice. These are massed, distributed, fixed and variable, and this screencast will discuss each of those 4 terms in a very basic sense, and then within the class we're going to start to think about the advantages and disadvantage of each of these types of practice. Okay, massed practice then is essentially where you're practicing one skill or a couple of skills continuously without any rest breaks or intervals. So if you had an hour session, you would be practicing for that whole hour without a break at any point, practicing that one skill continuously. So essentially the sessions, the actual practice sessions themselves, are usually very, very long. A good example of this is if you're practicing basketball free throws, you might just have, as this guy has, like a trolley of basketballs, and you'd just be continuously practicing for the hour. You could often see 3-point guards practice this in basketball, and you can see them do this even before games. They practice almost for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just practicing shooting the 3-point shot continuously with a feed of balls. Distributed practice is slightly different, and this time we do have rest intervals within the practice session. So again, if we take our 1 hour session that we just had, in this distributed practice you might have 3 smaller sessions of 15 minutes on the skill, and that allows for 3 5-minute breaks. Okay, so you break it up. Once you do a little bit of skill work, then you have a break, a little bit of skill work, then you have a break, a little bit of skill work, then maybe you finish your session. And these rest intervals allow the performers to recover physically and also to recover mentally, so they can think about what they've done but also get their breath back from something. Good examples here are in swimming. You might do a couple of lengths and then the coach might give you some sort of instruction, such as in the video. Alright, or interval training is a good example. So you might do a couple of laps on an athletics track. So you do 200 meters, have a break to help you recover physically, discuss something with your coach, and then off again. The other 2 forms of practice, fixed practice and variable practice. Fixed practice is where essentially you're practicing a skill in the same stable environment. So the environment around you and what you are using to practice that skill in doesn't change. It all remains the same. And the advantage of this is that you can start to groove or overlearn a skill. That means you can form a pattern within your brain and within your muscles, and so therefore that skill starts to become a habit. So it's where you're moving from that, trying to move from that associative phase to autonomous phase, trying to groove something, trying to become really good at something, perfect it. This is really good for that. Sometimes we call these skill drills, so you're just repeating a skill within a drill of a lesson. Good examples of this are, say, if we were practicing a discus throw within the discus circle, well, the circle and the environment itself will never change. I could just keep going into the circle and practice my throw and throw it out. Keep going into the circle, practice my throw and throw it out, and repeat that again and again and again. Well, that's fixed practice because the environment around us hasn't changed. The skill we're doing, technically you could alter it, but in this case we're just throwing a discus, so within that fixed practice we're just repeating and repeating and trying to perfect something. Variable practice is the opposite to fixed practice, and this is where you're working in a very, very changing environment. Now, when we talk about environment, we don't just talk about the weather. We're talking about maybe some opponents moving around the pitch. It might be the pitch itself changes. It could be you have lots of decisions to make within a short space of time. For in order to this to be successful, you need to make sure your practice itself is quite realistic to what you want the end outcome to be. I'll explain that in a minute. And in a variable practice, the performer will adapt their techniques and skills to suit the environment, to suit decision making, to suit moving because another performer has moved. So they're adapting all the time, and it actually strengthens schema. And within variable practice, we can use massed, where we just constantly practice something, or distributive, so we can practice for a bit and have a break, to change up the intensity levels. Now the example I'm going to use is football. So if we have an 11-a-side footballer and we're aiming to make them better using variable practice to develop their skills, we could put them in 5-a-side games such as the pitcher. And 5-a-side is completely different to 11-a-side in that it's a quicker environment. People are moving a lot more quickly. The game is a bit more fast paced. So the techniques you're using for 11-a-side start to adapt. You start to think a bit quicker, you start to make decisions faster. You're going to have to think about whether to mark players because they're moving a lot faster, and then when they go back to 11-a-side, those techniques can be utilised with an 11-a-side game. So that's variable practice. Alright, and what we'll do within the classroom, hopefully, is we'll have enough time to show this practically, the difference between variable practice and fixed practice, and see if we can think of any more examples. As per usual, make good notes and bring to the lesson.